you have to decide that you're going to love every kid.
Yes.
And that you're going to share with every kid with the same intentionality and the same passion for him or her that you would that kid who is doing everything right, as we say. And so it's an incredible opportunity to love and to serve and to share the good news of the gospel in so many different contexts.
Hi, and welcome to this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler. It's always a pleasure to get together with you. Today, I've got my good friend Howard Eddings. He is the director of REDZONE Ministries. Howard, good to get you here. Do an update on what's happening at REDZONE.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate you extending the invitation and making the time for us.
Well, I think I've mentioned before, our relationship goes back to when we were at Mid-South Bible College, and you were the dominant basketball player.
I don't know if we could say I was the dominant basketball player, but if you could call that basketball. No, I'm just kidding. We had a great time, and that was a long time ago, a lifetime ago, and a lot of pounds ago.
It's some great memories, though.
Oh, yeah. You had a radio voice then.
Well, I couldn't shoot hoops, and so my job was to announce the games, call the fouls. What was your jersey number?
I don't remember my jersey, maybe 20. I remember Greg McCullough was 21 or something like that, and I just tried to score 20 every game, so that was my I loved playing for Mid-South back in the day. We had some great times. In fact, Donald Gray, who's a pastor now here locally, and I were talking about, and reminiscing about winning the championship for whatever our conference was back in 1980. We had a great time playing all across the Mid-South, I guess, and we ended up going to North Carolina and winning the championship. And
wow.
I actually won thanks to it was a team effort, but they had to give the MVP to somebody, so they picked me.
I told you, man. That's why I had you on today, the MVP, most valuable player right
here.
Still
got the trophy, man.
Yeah.
Still got the trophy.
Tell me about your children again. You have how many?
I have 3 children. Yeah. They are all grown and gone. I got a 27-year-old who's working on his MBA up in Pennsylvania, and then I have a daughter who is 25 who's living in New York. Married, and her husband is doing law school at St. John. And then I have a 23-year-old who lives in the city of Memphis and decided that he wants to go out and make his way in the world. And he's just a great kid. I got great kids who are just go-getters.
Yeah, I know for many years, Howard, after you left Mid-South and you continued education, you became very involved with the Memphis Leadership Foundation with Larry Lloyd and actually took over and leading that organization for a number of years.
I went on Young Life staff at Larry's encouragement and worked for Eli Mars with Urban Young Life, and later moved over when Larry came back to Memphis around 1986. And 3 years later, I moved. Actually, started in 1987, and then in 1990, I came on as his vice president. And Larry and I go back to when I was 16 years old, so we have a long, rich history together. And I was blessed to be able to serve under his leadership.
What was that initial connection with you and Larry? You were 16 at that time. I mean, how did you guys connect and hook up?
Larry and I met, though I was reluctant in our meeting and our relationship, but he was persistent. As a Young Life leader at my high school, at Melrose High School in Orange Mound, where I happened to be still engaged and involved through REDZONE Ministries. And so he was committed to the Orange Mound community, moved in to our neighborhood, and we became friends the summer of my 10th grade year, which was around 79. Took me to camp, and where I heard the gospel in a very creative and unique way, and that helped me and led me to make the decision to follow Christ. And so that relationship, he and Becky, his wife, were rooted in our community and loved on kids and opened their doors and used countless volunteers to help with that and support that. And I was able to, God used that moment in time to show me how much I needed him.
Howard, back in 1970-something, my parents divorced, And my grandfather, my mom's dad, lived in Orange Mound in a duplex across from Cherokee Elementary School on Sims. And I remember moving in, with, I don't remember a whole lot at that time because I was a young boy and all I wanted to do was play all the time,
Right. Like most young boys.
Like most young boys. But the history of Orange Mound community is incredibly rich. And I don't think a lot of folks realize just how rich that is. I mean, it is the first African-American community that was built solely by African-Americans.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's about 128 years old. And by the way, Cherokee at that point in time, if you called Cherokee Orange Mound back then, you may have had to run home if you did that. So it was a different community. And now, over time, certainly just through change and transitions in neighborhoods, Cherokee is more sadly not sadly, is more like Orange Mound, and so people are more comfortable with that. And I have family members who live in Cherokee as well. And so it's a great. I'm glad to hear that you. I think I knew that you shared that with me. But yeah, Orange Mound has a rich heritage. 128, 129 years old, and we've celebrated that. It has a long legacy of being a self-driven community where folk who lived in that community had their own businesses, and arts was a big piece, and music was a big piece. Park Avenue was a thriving thoroughfare, as well as Carnes Avenue, and there are some folk in Orange Mound who definitely appreciate that history and really hold on to that legacy of things being great in Orange Mound. And it still is a great community, filled with assets that keeps that community thriving and moving forward.
It was built on the John George Diedrich Plantation, where he purchased 5,000 acres of land between 1825 1830. And the neighborhood got its name from a local fruit called the mock orange that grew on a bush. Did you ever see any of those oranges?
I still see them today.
They're still there.
They're not necessarily in Orange Mound, but in certain places. I think up around where the old cemetery may be. But I'm sort of an outdoors boy, or a country boy, if you will. And so I've seen them in Mississippi. I've seen that particular. Some people call it the Osage orange. Yeah. And it doesn't look like something you ought to bite into. But that is where it got its name from those blossoming Osage bushes, I guess, or small trees that blossom beautifully in the spring, and they produce that fruit, if you want to call it that.
During that time of the 70s, I mean, they were considered, the Orange Mound community, one of the largest concentration of African Americans, as I mentioned, compared to Harlem. And that's where you grew up.
Yes.
And so tell me about some of your memories growing up.
All my memories are fond memories. I grew up at a time when everybody did life together. I'm not saying that just to communicate to your listening audience that Orange Mound is something that it was something that it isn't. If you want to, if I could say it that way. So Orange Mound for me as a kid growing up was safe. It was thriving. It was bustling. It was a neighborhood where I was affirmed as a kid by all of the adults that I knew who could chastise and come alongside me as an adult. So I was raised by my neighbor as well as my parents. I was as close to my friends as I was to my family. And so that was a big deal to me. The school made a difference, or makes a difference. Melrose High School still is a prominent place in the community, but there were African-American men and women who owned businesses. We did a lot in our community. I don't remember leaving Orange Mound to do much until I was about 18 years old. And so we could do everything we needed to have done in that neighborhood.
So it was about the time you started college in the early 1980s. Mm-hmm. And that's really when the community started to change a lot. Like a lot of other neighborhoods, we see blight, we see drugs, crime, poverty. A lot of that is initiated by poverty.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's certainly an
Yeah.
ill effect of poverty, and so as it may have occurred a little bit earlier than the '80s. I mean, the process began to happen probably when busing and a little bit more desegregation began to happen. But I'm not an expert on that, and so the reality is, as people began to have choices, they began to make them, and as those folk who made their incomes began to rise, they made housing choices that led them out of Orange Mound. And so there were some folk left in the community who may not have had the income to sustain that tradition in terms of home ownership that Orange Mound had and has. And so it was left with rental properties and absentee landlords and in some cases slumlords who have not done as good a job as they ought to take care of the properties. And so instead of Orange Mound being the community of choice or the a choice neighborhood, it's becoming a neighborhood. It has become in certain areas a neighborhood where people are looking for low-cost housing, and that has an ill effect, as I said, on the market, on tax base, and on a lot of things that causes neighborhoods to flourish and to thrive.
Well, there's this revitalization effort, and you're part of that. You basically resigned your position with the Memphis Leadership Foundation because you had a heart for your community, and that was really the creation of REDZONE.
Yes, we in about 8 years ago, when I turned 50, that'll be close to your age.
Are you 50 now?
Well, 8 years ago I was 50. I don't feel like I wish I was 50 again. No, I'm blessed to be in pretty good health. And at 8 years ago, when I turned 50 years old, I just felt an unction, or I felt led of the Holy Spirit to. I thought it would be 15 years of my life I decided that I wanted to leave the foundation and give 15 years of my life to the Orange Mound community. I thought that would be long enough. I don't know where that time came from, that timing came from, except that I'd be 65 years old and felt like it was time to move on and do something else. But the Lord just led me to take the skills and gifts and abilities and talents that I had gained through my work with Memphis Leadership Foundation and try to replicate that in one community. So I was trying to go from being kind of a global approach to serving Memphis to a local approach to serving Memphis. Yeah. And REDZONE happens to be the platform or the vehicle for me to do that.
Why the name REDZONE?
Well, one day in D.C., I happened to be sitting in a workshop or seminar being led by this professor from Harvard, a smart guy from the education department. I don't remember his name, but he talked about kids, not just urban kids, but kids in general, who are in the red zone. And that can apply to a lot of different things. When a car is in the red zone, is running hot, or there are a lot when you're in the red, you're in a deficit. And so that color itself implies or indicates that there's trouble, and that people are it represents struggles.
But also, when you're in the red zone on a football game, you're getting close to scoring.
Yes.
So there's opportunity ahead.
Right. And that or the defense has to plan and think through and process and make good decisions to keep the offense from scoring. And that's what he likened it to. Right. He said kids are in the red zone. Yeah. It's a football term. And I just took that and ran with it. We were doing, through Memphis Leadership Foundation, a number of programs that were serving young people all across the city. And I simply took that name and tried to create or codify the work that we were doing and to get away from a lot of the acronyms that we had at that time that I couldn't remember when I was out trying to develop resources and share with people what we were doing at the foundation. So I decided we'd all be doing REDZONE, and we created that umbrella for all of our youth ministries. And so 8 years ago, when I decided to respond to God's call on my life in Orange Mound, I was allowed by the board of directors of Memphis Leadership Foundation to take the name Red Zone and focus the whole attention of that work in the Orange Mound community. But essentially, it's an outreach ministry designed to advocate for young people, helping them to make critical life decisions that impact the rest of their lives. And so that's where the whole football piece comes into place.
Howard, as you start engaging the young people in Orange Mound, which I know Red Zone is totally concentrated and committed to this age group of children, of kids, of young people, okay? Yes. Social and spiritual renewal is what you're looking to connect both of these through the Red Zone ministry.
Our commitment in terms of serving kids well or serving the community well is we're committed to children, families, and the community. I think in order to make the difference that needs to be made, that we have to engage kids holistically. And that may be for some an overused term, but for us it's real. It's what we do. Yeah. And so if we're going to impact them spiritually, we have to get engaged with them where they are, where they live, where they do life, and invest time-wise and advocate for them or come alongside of them. And so the whole reality around social engagement allows us the opportunity to love on them, as I've said, and then to communicate the gospel through that love.
What does this look like now in light of COVID, and these past, how many months now?
Right. The COVID has created a new reality for us all, and it's a new order of things, and we're trying to figure out the most effective way to respond to that and to be safe and to respect the fact that this disease is treacherous, if I could say that word, or these unprecedented times, as you know, every news outlet states. And so we've tried to respond to that. And the way we've done it is to stand in the gap for kids and their families. So we provide meals, we provide gift cards, we provide every month we do the Fred L. Davis Memorial Mobile Food Pantry, serving over 300 families or about 300 families every month. In partnership with Mid-South Food Bank and Beulah Baptist Church. Fred Davis is an icon, as you know, and hopefully you had him on your show. But if not, I mean, everybody in Orange Mound, most people in Orange Mound, and a lot of people who are doing urban ministry may have been influenced by Mr. Davis, or somehow or indirectly he influenced the organization that they were involved in. So. He means a lot to Larry Lloyd and a lot to me and a lot of other folk who are engaged in urban ministry. And so we are not directly engaged with young people. We did do a virtual learning zone that got too big for us. We were good at attracting kids, 9 to 18 years old. And we've had people on staff who are uniquely gifted to do that. And so when we started our virtual learning zone, it created for us a problem. We had more kids than we needed to have involved. And so over about 3 weeks span, because we didn't have the adequate space, I had to make a hard decision about whether or not we would continue that because we weren't observing the protocol associated with distancing and remaining safe. But we knew we needed to respond to the students who were trying to figure out this whole distance learning reality and virtual learning reality. And so we work with Shelby County Schools and Melrose directly, as well as Dunbar and kids who went to Hanley Elementary to bring them into our space. And it sounds like a lot of kids, but we only had 54, which was too many for us. And if we had more space, which is something I'd love to share with you about, and you know about.
That's really why I brought you in today, because we've got some exciting news. And what's crazy is, as you talk about having to make these really major adjustments for the ministry of the way you your protocol really for functioning as Red Zone, that one-on-one, up-close, personal, loving on these kids and the young people. How that has been, kind of diverted a little bit, not the passion or the intention of it, but the way it performs, through your ministry. But you just broke ground on a community center.
Correct.
So.
I'm excited about that. It's been a labor. I call it a labor of love. It's been something we've been engaged in for 10 or 12 years. We bought 7 acres of land in Orange Mound. Used to be the old Skyview Drive-In, just outside of the doors of Melrose High School, and across the street from our former center that we had, a little small 2,000 square foot building, if that big. But this land.
So that you bought the old Skyview Drive-In?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We bought that about 10 years ago.
I didn't realize
maybe a little
that.
longer. Oh yeah, and that's where our center has been. We've intended for our center to go there a long time ago, and so we call it our families and community engagement center.
Yeah.
And so it's designed to serve the whole community, to serve the whole family. And just last Wednesday, we were able to break ground on that center. We've been developing funds and developing a plan and building relationships and earning the right to do what we're doing in that community for the last 8 years. And so we have strong affirmation from other leaders, from other assets in the community, from the school itself, from the district to do this, from churches, from my homeboys who still doing what they do in terms of hanging out.
Yeah.
They know who we are. They've supported us all this time, and so we're on our way. This is a 44,000 square foot facility. It will have all the bells and whistles, and it will be state of the art, and it is something that we've invested a lot of time and energy into. And so we're doing this, not our building per se, but we're developing the land with in partnership with Porter Leith and the University of Memphis. Porter Leith, and those guys are doing a significant investment as well, and doing a tremendous building that will serve kids. Porter Leith, I didn't know this, is over 100 years, I think 180 years old or something like that.
Wow.
And they've been serving children for a long time.
Wow.
And so their plan is to do, and they broke ground as well. And we're kind of riding their coattail on the groundbreaking, but they're doing a state-of-the-art development center, early childhood development center that will serve about 300 students. And University of Memphis is tagging along and doing some educational stuff with that, where people can learn to serve kids better by observing and being engaged with what Porter Leith is already doing. And so this is an incredible moment for us.
Yes.
And we're excited. It's been a long time coming. We are working hard to design a building that fit the needs of the community. And we're meeting today with the architects who are very tedious about their job and very tenacious in terms of how they're just trying to draw something that works or design something that works for the community. And
yes.
We're very sensitive to what we believe the neighborhood needs, and so it'll be comprehensive. It will engage adults and kids alike.
When you talk about the revitalization of a community like Orange Mound, and remembering when you mentioned the Sky, I had forgotten about the Skyview Drive-In, and I remember growing up as a kid. There were community theaters, movie theaters.
Mm-hmm.
All over. As my dad, we would go see movies. As a kid. Now you've got pretty much the Malco chain, but
mm-hmm.
there used to be neighborhoods would have their own movie theater.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I know Orange Mound had its own,
mm-hmm.
and so this is a reflection of community, of people getting together, and so. Having that property and repurposing it
mm-hmm.
for even ultimately for the gospel of Jesus Christ.
We will hopefully add a piece that will allow us to show movies on the grounds. We won't be able to drive cars up to it like they used to. But the other incredible piece to this is that space, you talk about the history of Orange Mound, the history of Memphis. And the legacy of separation and racism and all the effects of that. Not a lot of African Americans went to Skyview Drive-In, and that whole area has been repurposed for use of people who live in that community, and so we're gonna try to leverage that and show a few movies. We'll have a place where that can happen, some green space where kids can come, adults can come, and others can use it for that purpose when they want to do outdoor movies, and try to create and some of that to memorialize the fact that it
Yes.
used to be a drive-in theater. And before then, I understand it was a potato farm that put a few people to work in the community. So it has come full circle. It's been a long time for the past 50 years almost. It's just been sitting there.
Wow!
And so we're excited that now we can take land that was barren or fallow for so long and do something for the community that the community can benefit from. And I hadn't heard many people say anything about this that indicates that they don't want this to happen. All they're saying is what's taking you so long. And so now it's time to it's going to take about a year to build it. It's a massive project. Hopefully the weather and code and zoning and all the stuff that goes with developing something like this.
We hope this pandemic will be far gone.
Yes, Lord. Yeah.
By the time you cut the ribbon to walk in there for the first time. I guess you'll be giving on your website updates as the progress and photographs if people can want to see, the groundbreaking. There's a video, I think, on Facebook, right?
There is a video on Facebook with the groundbreaking. We will do that as much as our abilities allow us to do that. We need to ramp up our capacities in that area. But the website certainly is the best vehicle and portal to understand what we're doing. But I'm certainly available. You can email me or call me, but we will try to track this thing as we go and try to capture the moments that are critical.
Sure.
So that we can promote, and we're most of the way there, but we certainly need people to understand that if you've been asking how you can get engaged, this is a way to get engaged. We're going to be buying everything from art supplies to building the structure itself, and to basketballs, to all the stuff that you need to make this.
So donations can be made directly to REDZONE Ministries.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. And your email address, by the way, is howard@redzonememphis.org.
Yes.
And is there a number somebody could call?
My number, let me give you my cell number because that's the easiest way to catch me, is 901-301-4081. But our website is redzonememphis.org, www.redzonememphis.org, and it has a donate button on it. And you can choose to give directly to this effort or to our ongoing operational efforts. But for me right now, our focus very much is on trying to figure out how to. We want to do this without having a lot of debt, or having any debt, quite frankly. And God has blessed us and opened a number of doors and a number of hearts and wallets to support this. And we just need to do that a bit more and engage people and give them an opportunity to get involved.
Howard, this is great. We're going to have to come back together. And when this groundbreaking is taking place, but when the ribbon cutting ceremony takes place, I got to be there. And we've got to do some programs from this new facility.
Let's do it.
By faith, we're going to believe we're going to do that,
Well, we hope to have, we're meeting, and we're going to have state-of-the-art equipment in there, so you need to bring some things, but it'll be set up so that you can do that very easily. We'd love to have you.
I'm going to do it. We're going to make that a plan.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing what his love, how it transforms? I was reading this morning in Philippians, and Paul was exhorting the church there, that your love may abound more and more. Love, not just some kind of a fluffy feeling inside, but the love based upon knowledge, and our knowledge of just, obviously, we get from God's Word, but in how we're mandated to love our neighbor. That is an expression, not just a feeling, but that is doing. That is
very active.
It's an active thing.
But so is our faith. I mean,
yes.
We need to I think we say this a lot, and I think what needs to happen from a practical dynamic, and this is what made the difference to me, that someone who could articulate what you just articulated in terms of what the Word of God says, live that out in the context of doing life beside me.
Yes.
And they didn't really have to, but that wasn't necessarily the only thing. I got the word of God verbally, and then through actions and through life, I saw how I, as a follower of Christ, was to do life. And that's what we do with kids. We love them where they are. And we just had a kid who was in our ministry for a number of years, killed on Thursday evening. I thought he's a sweet kid. He's a sweet young man. But life in that context can be very unforgiving and very hard. You can put yourself in dangerous situations all the time. And our commitment is to come alongside of guys like that and come alongside of guys who are committed to going to school and doing all those things we think they ought to do.
Yes.
And so it makes it you have to decide that you're going to love every kid.
Yes.
And that you're going to share with every kid with the same intentionality and the same passion for him or her that you would that kid who is doing everything right, as we say. And so it's an incredible opportunity to love and to serve and to share the good news of the gospel in so many different contexts.
Is Whitney still keeping you straight over there?
Whitney decided, thanks for asking about Whitney, that it was time for her to move on.
Really?
And so we chatted each other up this morning on text, but she's no longer with the organization.
Okay.
And I miss her.
I know you
that
do.
There's some kids who miss her.
She brought kids here. We did a radio show with some of the kids from the program.
Sure.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we'll pray that God will just direct her. And so you're driving this machine by yourself right now?
Pretty much, but it's a good time, and I call it we're moving away from the spirit of exceptionalism and triumphalism and moving into this time of lament.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out how to move this building forward, and God's timing allows me the freedom now to do some of that. But with that said, we're certainly looking for someone who can come in and come alongside of these kids. That's not my thing, as you well know. So we're looking for another Whitney. We're looking for people who feel led by God to engage kids, urban young people, where they are. And so that's another call I'll be excited to take, or email.
Okay.
I'll be glad to respond to as we look at what we're going to do. Of course, COVID-19 has allowed us to be a little bit more patient in how we move forward.
Right.
We won't engage kids personally until the Shelby County school system decides that schools can open again.
Yeah.
And we're ready to go. I pray if they just I'm watching that and I'm a part of that conversation. And so as they decide that we need to gear up. Right now we can move a little slower and use volunteers to do the work that we're doing.
Howard, thanks again, my friend.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Yeah.
Well, friends, that's all the time we have on this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. Thanks for stopping by. I'm Byron Tyler, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.